Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening, and I apologize for the lateness of the live stream tonight, but it seems we have a lot of people on, so I'll just say hello to who I can see. We have Ruth. Great to see you, Ruth. Hope you're well. We have Mark. Great to have you on, Mark. We have Aki's Mad is here from Scotland. We also have Freckle Bunny. Great to see you. We also have Viking President Stu of Stewland. Great to have you on. Hope you're well. Stefan is here. Wim is here. Daniele is here. Andrew Luke, Mr. Luke. Good to see you. Hope you're well up there in Northern Ireland. We have also number 3. Great to see you. Hope you're well. Let me see. You're having some problem with your app. Apology. Hope you're able to sort that out. Aki's Mad is here. Great to see you, Aki's Mad. We have Ginger's Giraffe. Great to see you. Hope you're well. Wolf Pet is on. Great to see you, Wolf Pet. Tiny Demolition Lover. Hope you're well. Another one up there in Scotland. Lots of Scots on tonight. We have also, let me see, Frederick. Great to see you. Hope you're well. 91 Leeds is here. Great to see you. Mad Monk is on. David McGuinness. Great to see you, David. Make sure also to check out the Two Davies YouTube channel on Everything Scotland. Jared Mack, great to see you, Jared. Hope you're fine tonight. Who else have we got? Denzel Simpson, great to see you. Roisin is here, great to have you on, Roisin. Mark Alistair, great to see both of you. We also have Beanamac, great to see you, Beanamac. Deadeye, great to see you. Suella goes BNP, more like she goes not C. Yes, that's true. Wasn't she a speaker at the National Conservative Conference or something, or the Conservative National Conference or something like that, some months back, or maybe it was last year? We also have, let me see, Roseanne. Good to see you, Roseanne. Hope you're fine. Killer, thanks for moderating tonight, Killer, and thanks for dealing with my messed up stream timetable. So guys, I want to say hello to everyone. Hope you're all very well and hope you had a nice weekend. So let's start off with a sort of Brexit story, not exactly Brexit story, but related somewhat to Brexit potentially. Labour conference rules changes could stop members debating issues like Brexit. So debates sought by local Labour parties excuse me. Oh, that's a great way to start the live stream. Sorry about that. I hope you weren't listening with earphones. Let's start again. Debates sought by local Labour parties on issues like Brexit and electoral reform at the annual conference starting this weekend could be quashed by the leadership after a series of rule changes passed on Tuesday. The National Executive Committee, the NEC, Labour's governing body, voted on Tuesday to approve a series of rule changes, including one that requires motions for debate at the conference in Liverpool to be deemed contemporary, it is understood. Well, it's not completely clear what this means in practice. Some Labour MPs and internal party groups fear it could be used to prevent debate on areas beyond the bounds of the National Policy Forum document, the basis for the manifesto, agreed upon earlier this month. So it seems that the Labour Party, the NEC, which Starmer, I think, is in charge of, will be able to decide what people can debate, and they have to be within the what do you call it, the National Policy Forum document. So if Brexit is not included in that, I haven't looked it up, but if Brexit isn't included on that, then people will not be allowed to talk about Brexit. There have been some expectations among many Remain-minded Labour members and some MPs that the party's cautious stance on Brexit could be debated, with calls for Labour to commit to future membership of the EU single market. But one MP who has been involved in tabling motions on Europe said they feared that the new procedure would be used to rule those out of order. Wonderful. So the party bigwigs don't want people talking about Brexit, especially at the party conference. Now, I imagine they'll be able to talk about Brexit outside the party conference, but it will be limited to, especially at the conference, you won't be able to bring up the issue of Brexit. You'll have to only bring up issues related to the potential future manifesto. And it doesn't look like Brexit is going to be mentioned in the manifesto. Rejoining the EU or rejoining the single market is unlikely because Starmer has ruled these things out. He said, look, we're not going to do that. So it's not going to be part of the manifesto. So there'll be no debate on Brexit. Okay. Debate, I think, is healthy for a party. But it seems Labour don't want to talk about things that are... Now, I can understand if you're focused on winning a general election, you want what you consider side issues to be excluded. You don't want the entire conference to collapse under, with recriminations or infighting. So from a politically strategic point of view, yes, I can understand this. But this is really bad for the party, I think. But I don't think it's going to make much difference. It's just maybe Starmer stamping his seal of approval on a policy and not on other policies. Anyway, I want to move on. Of course, Suella Braverman went down a very dark road today, and it even got Ian Dale criticising it. So I want to show you this clip from LBC earlier today, where Ian Dale had something to say about Suella Braverman.
I think that if Suella Braverman was going to make this speech, she should have made it in this country. She shouldn't have gone to Washington to do it. That's a minor criticism in a way. And I don't see a problem with opening up a debate on our immigration system, on refugees, etc., etc. I'm not somebody who believes in open borders. I'm genuine.
I hate this term, open borders. Nobody is talking about open borders. Who has ever mentioned, I am pro-open borders? Like, this is a straw man. This is an argument that nobody is making, that you have the Conservatives and Conservative lights criticising. Oh, look, we don't want open borders. I'm against open borders. Well, who the hell is for open borders? The vast majority of politicians and people believe in some sort of control at the border. The problem is the only place there's open borders is for goods coming in from the EU. That's where there's open borders. And you don't hear many Brexiteers complaining about that. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. Brexit, even more taboo than Lord Voldemort. Yes. We don't mention that person's name here. We don't mention the B word at the party conference. So how will people get round it if they can't actually get round it because you'll only be allowed to speak about certain things. So unless somebody tries to smuggle Brexit into it, if they're talking about the NHS, maybe, we can talk about the NHS, we can debate the NHS and what we're going to do. Well, somebody can try and smuggle in, well, if we brought back freedom of movement, then we could help the NHS deal with its staffing problems. No? If we try to undo the freedom of movement ending, something like that. Well said, Brad. So maybe somebody will try and work their way around the rules. Mithril, thanks so much for that super chat. And thanks, Brad, as well. Don't forget, Starmer is the leader who stood on giving CLPs more say in forming the manifesto. No, I understand that, but it is worrying. Like, you would imagine the manifesto is going to be something that would be, yes, tailored to the public in a sense. This is what do the public want? But also we have our own core beliefs. So it should be a mix of core beliefs of the Labour Party and not pandering to the public, but providing them something, a convincing policy that would get them out to vote. Look, I think in 2019 the policies that Jeremy Corbyn had, the Labour policies in 2019, were wonderful policies. Maybe there were too many of them. Maybe they were not sold in the right way, but the policies were good. Unfortunately, the public wasn't interested. They wanted to get Brexit done. They wanted Boris and his oven-ready deal. Anyway, let's get back to Ian Dale and open borders.
Our immigration system, on refugees, etc., etc. I'm not somebody who believes in open borders. I'm genuinely not. But I am somebody who criticises politicians like Suella Braverman for the language that they use. And as I say, today there wasn't an ounce of understanding of what it means to be an asylum seeker. And this is from a second-generation immigrant herself. That's what I find so difficult to understand.
Why do you find it difficult to understand? She's a fascist. She believes in pulling up the ladder. She doesn't care about asylum seekers. She doesn't care about immigrants. She doesn't care about people coming from the country that I think it was Kenya. I think her father's from Kenya. He was an Indian refugee to Kenya, and then the family moved from Kenya to the United Kingdom, as far as I know. Or I may be mistaken, but they are at least economic migrants, and maybe refugees. Maybe they were refugees. But anyway, she doesn't care about those people. She has understood that if she wants to be successful, she has to be as racist and as bigoted as possible. Now, I don't know if she is actually all that racist and bigoted, but she knows that the people listening are, and she's feeding them as much red meat as she can. I don't actually think she is, because when she's asked a question, for example, when she was asked about safe routes, she completely collapsed and offered the question over to somebody else, one of the permanent secretaries or something like that, because she's incompetent. So I think she's stupid, but I hope I'm right here, but I don't think she's racist. I don't think she's intelligent enough to make racist responses. Of course, we're not saying racists are intelligent people, but she's not clever enough to be able to say, well, I support this, or these are the problems, and this is how we're going to fix them. I think she's just pandering to the most racist and bigoted in society, hoping that they're going to get her into number 10, because that's her goal. She wants to become Prime Minister someday. And she doesn't care who she walks on. She's ruthless. She doesn't care who she's going to walk on in order to get there. I would imagine she'd deport her own parents if they're still alive. She'd deport her own parents if it meant she would get into number 10. It's not so much about I don't like these people. It's like, I know that you don't, so I'm going to play that game. Or maybe I'm wrong. Mithril, thank you for giving out those memberships. One to Tim That, FY, Akismad, Number Free, and Stefan. Yay! That's great. I won't be on the post-stream chat tonight, unfortunately, but you will get access to Discord, and I hope, if I can, I'll try and pop in a few minutes, maybe later tonight, but I don't know if I can. But I promise, when I get some things sorted out, I'm going to be on the post-stream chats much more often. Anyway, let's get back to this.
I don't know the circumstances of how her family came to the UK in the first place. I don't know whether they were economic migrants or asylum seekers. But whichever it was, you would have thought it would have given her a little bit of an insight into why immigrants want to come to this country and what happens when they get here.
She fully understands what they go through. She just doesn't care. Either because she's a racist and a bigoted person, or she just sees it as a platform for her to get into number 10.
So it would take a lot for me to want to get back into elected politics. But I'll tell you what, if I ever thought that Suella Braverman could become leader of the Conservative Party, that might be something that could tempt me back to try and stop that happening, because I think she is totally underqualified to not only to be Home Secretary, but to be in the cabinet.
Look, I really don't understand this thing. Brad says Braverman probably thinks Braverman probably thinks the BNP are commies. The British National Party are commies. Yeah, probably. They're not far right enough for her. And some of the language she was using could have been taken directly from the National Front or the BNP. It's really worrying, the type of language that's being used. And she, of course, talking about refugees and asylum seekers as hordes or an invasion. Her deputy, Robert Jenrick, was saying, they're cannibalizing Britain. This is horrid language. The language that was used back in the 1930s to describe, a certain group of people in Germany. We can't get away from that. Thanks, Brad. But it's my question is, if you were in a group of people, an organization, and there were people who were racist and bigoted, and the organization did nothing about these people, would you stay in that organization? This is my question for so-called decent Tory MPs. I presume there are some decent Tory MPs. Do they not look at people like Suella Braverman and say, I can't associate myself with the Conservative Party as long as she is there? Can you imagine any organisation they'd be part of? Yes, there are going to be some dodgy people, but imagine if this person was responsible for something, was promoting that organisation, and were promoting the organisation as a racist and bigoted organisation, and you yourself were not a racist or a bigot. What would you do? Well, if it was me, I would leave that organisation. Say, if the management or the leadership of this organisation don't do anything about person X, who's promoting the organisation as racist and bigoted, I don't know why I have trouble saying that, racist and bigoted, I would leave. Maybe Ian Dale is correct. Maybe you should try and get in and try and change it from within. But we don't see that many Tory MPs coming out against Suella. Has anyone actually come out against Suella Braverman? When she loses her seat, probably then they'll turn around and say, oh, she was a horrible individual and I had nothing to do with her. I was the voice of reason in the room. Only when she's gone. It's like with Boris Johnson. They were afraid to criticise Boris Johnson when he was an MP. As soon as he was out the door, but it was right that he was gone and he should have gone before and I didn't support him and stuff like that. Cowards. Anyway, moving on. But staying with this story, Yvette Cooper criticises Braverman for scapegoating LGBT people in deeply divisive speech. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, the Shadow Home Secretary, has issued a statement about Suella Braverman's speech on Twitter, which is stronger than the statement about it she issued overnight before she had seen the text. At 10:30 a.m., she said it was deeply divisive and unworthy of Braverman's office. Suella Braverman has lost grip of Tory asylum chaos. She is targeting and scapegoating LGBT people. Deeply divisive, damaging political game playing, unworthy of her office. Instead of blaming people persecuted in places like Uganda for who they love, she should sort the chaos at home. She also received a rebuke from the United Nations. No, this isn't the story here. Let me see, where is it? Here we go. UN rebukes Suella Braverman over her attack on Refugee Convention. The UN's Refugee Agency has rebuked Suella Braverman after she claimed that world leaders had failed to make wholesale reform of human rights laws because of fear of being branded racist or illiberal. Oh God. UNHCR issued a highly unusual statement on Tuesday defending the 1951 Refugee Convention and highlighting the UK's record asylum claim backlog. It came after the Home Secretary refused to rule out leaving the convention. Okay, I don't see that happening. And said the international community had collectively failed to modernise international laws. Once again, she's playing hardball because she knows the racists and bigots love this. They lap this sort of thing up. She also claimed that women and gay people must face more than discrimination if they are to qualify as a refugee. The statement has been challenged by refugee charities. So if you're gay or a woman, that may not be enough to qualify you as being persecuted in, I don't know, Afghanistan. Maybe she should go and have a trip to Afghanistan for a week. Not as Home Secretary, but just as Suella Braverman, and see how she gets on. See how women and gay people are treated there. She could go around telling the Taliban that she's gay and see how they treat her. And then she may realize, actually, maybe we should be doing something to help people. Speaking to the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., Braverman claimed the international community had failed to reform the UN's Refugee Convention of 1951 and the European Convention on Human Rights. The first reason is simply that it is very hard to renegotiate these instruments. The second is much more cynical, the fear of being branded a racist or a liberal. Any attempt to reform the Refugee Convention will see you smeared as anti-refugee. Why do you want it changed? Why do you want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights? These are conventions to protect British people as well. This is like burning down your house because you don't like, I don't know, the curtains. Really, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. It's like, we have to punish these asylum seekers. Let's leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Let's end the European Convention on Human Rights. But that also protects British people. Shut up about British people. We want to punish refugees. That's the thinking. But it's mainly British people who would benefit from maintaining the European Convention on Human Rights. But let's punish asylum seekers. That's what we have to do. To discourage, like, what is the thinking behind the exit from the European Convention on Human Rights? Well, it'll make it easier for us to deport people. It will create a better deterrent. But the deterrent doesn't work. The baby Stockholm was supposed to be a deterrent. Stop the boats. No, what was it? Rwanda was supposed to be a deterrent. None of these things work. Because the people who are leaving countries where they are being persecuted or war or whatever are not thinking about Suella Braverman or Bibi Stockholm. Hey Suella, BNP rant. BNP rang. Want their material back. I said Gareth. Yes. I don't know why she didn't make what was his name? Nick Griffin as the immigration minister. Well, although the guy who's in charge looks a bit like Nick Griffin, doesn't he? If you don't know who Nick Griffin is, look him up. He's a very nice individual. In the late 60s, 70s, Ireland took in refugees escaping religious persecution from the UK. Yes, from Northern Ireland. She would criminalize homosexuality again if she became Prime Minister. Yes, and this is something that people like Ian Dale probably don't understand. He would be persecuted as well. But I'm a Tory. I don't care. That would be the response. We have to punish these people. It doesn't, we always think that we're progressing, but there's always somebody who's trying to go backwards. Be it the DUP, be it Suella Braverman, be it GB News. There's somebody who always wants to go backwards. They don't want to go forward. They're afraid of progress. They're afraid of equality for everyone. Anyway, LGBT plus conservative patron accuses Braverman of dog whistle politics. Suella Braverman has been accused of dog whistle politics by a senior patron of LGBT plus conservatives before a speech in which she will give that Britain should not grant asylum to people who simply express a fear of discrimination for being gay. Comments, the Home Secretary's office said she would were drawing criticism even before her speech to a right-wing US think tank. The Labour challenged conservative LGBT plus MPs and others to condemn the remarks. Speaking to the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C. So we've already heard that. My goodness. Anyway, let's continue. There's a story here from Sky News about this.
I think most members of the public would recognise those fleeing a real risk of death, torture, oppression or violence as being in need of protection. However, as case law has developed, what we have seen in practice is an interpretive shift away from persecution in favour of something more akin to a definition of discrimination.
Do you not understand how discrimination snowballs into persecution? Like, what she's trying to say here is, well, these people are not persecuted, they're discriminated against. Like, Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Suella just shredded the women and children line. Yes, women and children first. No, to hell women and children. That is Suella Braverman's line. We're not going to allow people to claim asylum if they are discriminated against, only if they're persecuted. Well, in Suella Braverman's mind, what's the difference between discriminated against and persecuted? I'd love for her to explain the difference.
And there has been a similar shift away from a well-founded fear towards a credible or plausible fear.
But if you're not there, then you have to make there has to be a credible fear or a plausible fear. Like if you're not there on the ground, you don't know exactly what's happening. You don't know what the individual is going through. You have to assume that they are persecuted. Like in most cases, if the people, like we're talking about asylum, we're talking about people who are not just people who just turn up and go, I'm here on holiday, but I'd like to, overstay my visa, and I'm going to say, yeah, I'm being persecuted. This isn't the case. These are people who have crossed the channel, who risked their lives, who paid huge amounts of money to people smugglers, who want to get to Britain. And we can apply this to any country. Like we tend to focus mainly on Britain, of course, but a lot of countries, many countries around the world take much bigger numbers than Britain. But the focus here is, we need to keep these people out. Most reasonable countries are saying, yes, we want to welcome people in and then process them. And if they are legitimate, then they can stay here. They can rebuild their lives. If they're not, like you should be investing in processing claims, making sure that the controls are in place. But what she's doing is just always about blaming. Like this is blaming the victims here. Oh, well, you don't meet my criteria. I've set new criteria and you don't meet it. Off you go.
The practical consequence of which has been to expand the number of those who may qualify for asylum and to lower the threshold for doing so. Let me be clear. There are vast swathes of the world where it is extremely difficult to be gay or to be a woman. Where individuals are being persecuted, it is right that we offer sanctuary. But we will not be able to sustain an asylum system if, in effect, simply being gay or a woman or fearful of discrimination in your country of origin is sufficient to qualify for protection.
Then what is the requirement? If people are fearful of staying in their country, what is the requirement?
Article 31 of the Refugee Convention makes clear that it is intended to apply to individuals coming directly from a territory where their life was threatened.
And here we come to France. Oh, well, these people are coming from France. They're not coming directly from Uganda. They're not coming directly from Rwanda or Eritrea. No, they're coming directly from France. So, well, these people are not in danger in France, so they should stay in France. This is her entire shtick, and this is the entire shtick of the racists and bigots. Why aren't they staying in France? Because they don't want to stay in France. There's no obligation on them to stay in France. They have no connections in France. Can you imagine if I took Suella Braverman and dropped her in some part of the world, but I gave her a choice. I said, do you want to land in a country where they speak English, or do you want to land in a country where they don't speak English? Where do you think she would prefer to land? And you can apply this to most people. Like, Algerians generally move to France because of the language. Now, not all Algerians and not all Moroccans speak French, but that's generally where they go because of the colonial rule, because of the colonial connections. Some Moroccans move on to Italy or they go as far as Britain, but because they already have some community there. So you have some connection there. You have friends, family. But my question to Suella Braverman, if I were to drop you anywhere in the world, where would you prefer to be dropped? In a country where you can speak the language or you can't speak the language? Well, you'd prefer to be in the country where you can speak the language. Okay. Well, but the country where I'm dropping you, actually you can't speak the language, but you'll be safe there. Would you prefer? No, I'd prefer, if the choice was both of them are safe, one is where I can speak the language, I prefer to be where I speak the language. What if I said your family is in that country as well? Would you prefer to be dropped in a place where your family are? Yes, I would. Is this getting through to people?
It also states where people are crossing borders without permission, they should present themselves without delay to the authorities and must show good cause for any illegal entry. The UK, along with many others, including America, interpret this to mean that people should seek refuge and claim asylum in the first safe country that they reach.
Which isn't a requirement. So you don't understand the convention.
But NGOs and others, including the UN Refugee Agency, contest this.
It's not they contest it. It's not in the convention. They contest this. Have you actually read the convention? No, she probably has, but she just ignored this, or she's pretending. This is what I don't understand with a lot of these politicians. Are they ignorant, or are they stupid, or are they just pretending to be? It's like with, when it came to Dominic Raab, I think he was just stupid. He wasn't actually pretending, because he was asked about the Good Friday Agreement when he was foreign bloody secretary, and he couldn't answer. He was like, did you read the Good Friday Agreement? Which you would imagine as foreign secretary or as Brexit minister, I don't remember which he was at the time. I think it was Brexit minister. You would imagine the Brexit minister would have read the Good Friday Agreement, because it's somewhat important to Northern Ireland and Brexit. Just a little bit. You would imagine he would have read it. He didn't. Why? Why did he not read the Good Friday Agreement? It's not War and Peace. It's not the Bible. It's 35 pages long. I think 34 including the cover. Or 35 including the cover, 34 I don't remember, something like that. I haven't read it in a while myself, but I have actually read it. But it's like 35 pages. You could read it in probably half an hour if you're quite quick. But he didn't. Why did he not do that? Because he couldn't be bothered, or because he didn't know about it, or did I have to read something? What's the Good Friday Agreement? Is it some sort of religious document?
The status quo, where people are able to travel through multiple safe countries and even reside in safe countries for years while they pick and choose their preferred destination to claim asylum, is absurd and unsustainable.
If we applied this is why her position is absurd. If we were to apply it, then the neighbouring country would have to take all the refugees, all the asylum seekers. And then what would happen? Can you imagine if Turkey, we said to Turkey, Turkey has to take all asylum seekers leaving most of the Middle East, like Syria and other countries around there. What would happen to Turkey? Well, Turkey would probably collapse politically. Then what would happen? Well, refugees would leave Turkey to Greece. And then what would happen in Greece? What would happen to many of the countries in the Mediterranean? They would collapse because the asylum seekers would have to stay there. So as countries collapse, they would eventually get to Britain. When France collapses politically and refugees start leaving, then the next safe country would be, of course, Britain. So they would defeat their own argument. Of course, this is this is an exaggeration, but there's a reason why we don't just force people to stay in the next safe country, because it's not always it won't stay safe if we just force people to stay there. It's just a racist trope. That's all it is. Keep people people have to stay in the first safe country they get to.
Look, I think there was quite a lot of confusion as to why she had chosen to come here, to the other side of the Atlantic.
Because then she doesn't face criticism or scrutiny, maybe.
Talk about migration. If she was looking for a system where the migration policy works, well, she certainly won't find it here in Washington. Conversely, if she was looking to come and criticize America's asylum system, which many believe is broken, then diplomatically that's pretty awkward. And already the headlines here in some of the American papers are drawing an inference that she is somehow criticizing the asylum policy.
Brexiteers going to America to criticize their asylum policy, while at the same time saying, can you give us a trade deal?
Of President Biden. Her speech was provocative. It was designed to be provocative. It was designed, some say, to be a dog whistle to the right of her own party a week before the Conservative Party conference.
Once again, I said this before, she wants to be the next party leader. She wants to be the next, well, not prime minister, because Rishi Sunak is going to be out on his arse pretty soon. But she wants to be leading the party. And I think this is what's probably going to happen. The party is going to move further to the right. She's going to be the headbanger in charge. And she's not going to win any elections. She's not going to win any seats. She's going to lead a small, angry party going forward while Labour is in government. And they'll be doing all sorts of extreme criticism. But I really do hope that the Conservatives lose a massive number of seats. So while if Suella Braverman is in charge, she'll be in charge, of a small clown car of MPs. Because that's what they deserve. They chose a clown in charge to be put in charge, Boris Johnson, and he drove the party into a wall. And instead of actually deciding, okay, we need to put somebody competent in charge, they put in Liz Truss. And then after that clown car of, it's like, you crash the car into a wall with Boris Johnson, and then you reverse the car into your own house and collapse a few walls of your own house with Liz Truss, and then you say, okay, we actually need to move forward. Let's put the guy who doesn't know what the cost of living crisis means, we put him in charge. He can drive us to some sort of safety, and he drives the car off a cliff as well. So what do? Let's put somebody in charge who's even more extreme. And I think this is what's going to happen. The Tories are going to lose the election. The headbangers within the party, not the MPs, because the MPs will be gone, but it will be the headbangers, the members, who will say we didn't have somebody conservative enough. We didn't have somebody extreme enough. We didn't have somebody who wanted to deal with immigration, who wanted to stop the boats. Rishi Sunak didn't really care about stopping the boats. Rishi Sunak didn't understand these things. He wasn't really a Brexiteer. These sort of things. This is the sort of language you're going to hear. And they're going to choose somebody more extreme. I thought the party might go in the direction of somebody more moderate, but that's probably unlikely to happen because the headbangers will view Rishi Sunak as being the moderate. See, if they had lost the election with Liz Truss, then the party could move more to the centre. But I think the party is going to move even further to the right in opposition. And it's going to become a sort of UKIP in Parliament.
Was trying to do was, some say, deflect from a domestic problem that is migration, but actually she would say to point to a global system that is broken, that a system of asylum that was designed decades ago that is now, because of a global movement of people, not fit for purpose. But it is her language, I think, which has made some somewhat concerned, I think summed up perhaps by Amnesty International, the director saying that she is a dangerous fool who is doing enormous harm at huge cost. I had a brief question with her.
yes. Peter, thank you so much for that super chat. On Amazon, there's a picture book on human rights. Send that to Liz Truss, Suella Braverman. Maybe she'll be able to read it or at least follow the pictures. But it's really worrying because somebody like this will be head of the Conservative Party, and the right-wing media will, of course, support Suella Braverman. Now, I think I have a video dropping tomorrow, but I think some off the right are turned off by Suella Braverman because she's not actually achieving anything. There's a lot of rhetoric, and of course there was a lot of rhetoric here, but she didn't actually deliver anything when she was Home Secretary. What she got the Bibi Stockholm into port and then had to evacuate it 4 days later. She had her illegal immigration bill. It's not stopping the boats. And the Rwanda policy was not hers, it was Priti Patel's, but she sort of championed it as well, and it hasn't succeeded. Now, there is a court case coming up. It was an appeal in the Supreme Court, I believe, that should be held sometime later this year, maybe in November or December. And then the Tories might, if it succeeds, but we're still talking about maybe 200 people a year being sent to Rwanda. This isn't going to bring down the numbers, but of course it will be presented as a political victory. See, the racists and bigots won. We're going to send people to Rwanda. Not a lot, but we're going to send them. We'll probably actually take in more people from Rwanda than we'll be actually sending, but don't tell the newspapers that. It'll be victory for Suella on the front page of the Express when the verdict comes in, probably. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. View from the UN Max. It emphasizes that Article 31 does not support the notion that asylum seekers must be claimed. Asylum must be claimed in the first safe country reached. Yes, thanks for that, Gareth. It's true. There's no requirement for asylum seekers to claim asylum. But just thinking about it logically, it wouldn't make sense for people to claim asylum in the first safe country, because then there would be a risk of destabilizing that country. If everyone had to claim asylum in the first safe country, and you're talking about huge numbers of people who have no connection to that country. They're just going there because because they're escaping a place that is unsafe. For example, there's a natural disaster, or there's war, or there's a dictatorship or something like that. They leave, they go into the next safe country, but they don't want to stay in that country because maybe, they have no connections to that country. They would prefer to go to a country where they have connections, family, friends, or, in the case of Afghanistan, in some cases, I used to work for the British Army. I used to work for the Allies. And now, they've left me high and dry with the Taliban. I don't want to stay too long on this, guys, but I just want to cover one final bit and then we'll move on. Also because the live stream is a little bit shorter today than usual. Let me see if this loads.
Simply being...
So, a Tory MP was asked about this, not one of the brightest, and this was his response.
Simply being gay in certain countries would still guarantee you or entitle you to refugee status or not?
Well, perhaps in some cases it would depend on the individual circumstances, but you have to remember as well, those people will have travelled through a number of safe countries as well. You look at France, you look at Germany, you look at Italy, you look at Greece, you look at Spain. Now, these are all countries where they actually respect the LGBT community.
Oh God, I'm getting tired of responding to this crap.
Where you can actually be safe. So I think there is a little bit of kind of asylum shopping that goes on there as well, and that's something that
Asylum shopping. Once again, if I took Brendan Clark Smith and I asked him, would you prefer to be landed in a country where they speak English or they speak another language? Which would you prefer? Well, I'd actually prefer to land in the country where they speak English. Oh, you're asylum shopping now.
It's interesting that you raise the term asylum shopping. Do you have no qualms at all about how the Home Secretary characterised migrants today?
No, because he's a fascist. He doesn't care. He's on her side. He loves the type of language she uses. He uses it himself.
Said 3/4 of whom, incidentally, get leave to remain from her own government. She talked about them being a threat to national security, a threat to public safety. She warned of heightened levels of criminality. Multiculturalism has failed, she said. I mean, at best, this is pretty offensive. At worst, it could be deemed to be quite dangerous in terms of that characterisation, couldn't it?
We've got to make sure that the people coming over are who they say they are, and of course we have a responsibility to protect the public as well. But we've accepted hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers. We've had people coming from Ukraine, people coming from Hong Kong, from Syria, from Afghanistan, and we're a very welcoming country. And
so there are more countries in the world than Hong Kong, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. But Afghanistan is closed. Hong Kong, I'm not sure what the situation is. But there are more countries than that. It isn't like we only take in people from Ukraine and Hong Kong. That's it. If you're from a country nearby, sorry, that's the luck of the draw. Roisin, thanks so much for that super chat. The world asylum system would collapse if Braverman's ideas were implemented. She's shameful. Yes, they would collapse because, as I said before, if people had to be, thanks once again, Roisin, if people had to stay in the first safe country, then what would happen to that country? It would collapse. The system would collapse, and then what would happen? People would leave that country because the social safety net would be gone. Law and order would break down, and they would move into the next safe country. And then what would happen there? It's, that's why we have a system where we allow people to claim asylum where they want. Now, they can make the claim. It doesn't mean that they will be successful. This is the sort of thing that the Tories are trying to sell. Well, everyone who makes a claim is successful. No, 70% are. That's the Home Office's own figures. So 30% are not. So it's not everyone who claims is successful, that you're just waving people in.
Of course, we want that to continue, and there are people from other countries claiming that as well. But we also want to make sure that...
So you have no qualms about the language? You have no qualms about the language or the
people choose their language carefully. I mean, there's, again, the multicultural term. And again, as I said earlier, I think in this country that we value you, whatever your race or religion is, and that's a very British value. And those are things that I would hope that anybody coming to Britain would respect as well. And we respect our neighbours, we respect our friends. And in some places...
This guy is a Brexiteer. Okay, just think about that just after what he's just said.
That's not the case, and of course that's why many wish to leave those countries, but there are safe countries.
FY, thanks for that comment, says 6 Afghans died in the Channel. So this guy is rabbiting on, babbling on about, well, we have safe routes from Afghanistan. No. Why did 6 Afghans die in the Channel if there are safe routes? Thanks for that comment. That's what should be being asked of this guy. If there are people from these so-called safe-routed countries, then why are there people dying in the Channel? If you don't know, then just say, I don't know, but don't give us some bullshit answer.
On the way here.
The Home Secretary wants, she says, a big discussion about the Refugee Convention and whether it is fit for a modern world, as she put it. If she doesn't get that, she won't say whether we should withdraw from it or not. Do you think we should?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see. You had the same discussion with the ECHR as well, but I'd just very quickly say that the Geneva...
Look, the UK is not going to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. The European Court of Human Rights is not going to pull out because of the Good Friday Agreement. And, you know, these are the last throws of the dice by the Conservatives, the last desperate attempts to hold on to some few votes that are left. They believe that the country needs to move further to the right so that they can remain in power. But the country is not moving to the right. People are tired of this. People are more concerned with the cost of living crisis, which Rishi Sunak and his party don't give a crap about, because they're not impacted by it. And their donors are not impacted by it. And their friends are not impacted by it. So they don't care about the cost of living crisis, but that's the real issue. The NHS, on its knees. Why aren't they doing anything about that? Because they don't need to rely on the NHS. I really don't understand why people don't understand this. The Tories don't care about the NHS because they don't use it. They don't care about welfare because they don't use it. They don't care about the cost of living crisis because they don't experience it. They don't care about benefits because they don't have to rely on them. So why do people who do rely on those things, people who do need the NHS, people who do rely on benefits, people who do experience the cost of living crisis, why the F, I'm keeping calm here, why the F do they vote for the Conservatives? Because they're going to stop the boats. They've convinced me that all of these issues are nothing compared to an asylum seeker staying in a hotel. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Wow, very kind of you. Thank you so much, Gareth. Imagine there's a road, a refugee is on one side, the destination UK is on the other. Now imagine that the road itself is made up of safe countries. How can you get there? You're going to, how are you going to get to where you're going if you step in the middle? Yes. If you want to get to Britain, you have to pass through these countries because there are no direct routes. You can't get on a plane and fly to Britain unless you have the paperwork, unless you have a visa. If you don't have a visa, then you can't come. You'll be refused entry. Now you'll hear people like, thanks so much again, Gareth, very kind of you. You'll hear people like Jonathan Gullis saying, well, these people, why don't they just get on a plane? Either he doesn't understand that or he's pretending not to. And I think it's the latter, because he's asked stupid questions like this before, and surely somebody has informed him. Like, if he was honest, if he was really ignorant, and I'm not saying everyone has to be an expert on immigration or whatever, but if you're ignorant of these things, you have people paid, you have advisors who are paid to inform you of these things. So if you were honestly ignorant and you said, well, I actually didn't know, that's a really strange thing. Why don't people just get on a plane? Wouldn't it make more sense instead of like traveling across the sea? Expert, advisor, tell me the reason why because this route has been cut off. So people are not allowed to use that route. they can't get on the plane. So they have to find another way. Okay, thanks for informing me. Now I'm not going to make that stupid statement again. That's the way politics should be, but unfortunately it's not. AN98, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to see you once again on the stream. Is Starmer too scared to upset Brexiteers and undecided voters? And do you think he's been unclear on what he wants to do if he gets elected? Yes, on both. So is Starmer too scared to frighten Brexiteers and undecided voters? Yes, I think that's I can't think of any other reason why he's not talking about Brexit, not talking about rejoining the European Union. He's afraid, and the party is afraid. Maybe it's according to internal polling they have done, that if we don't talk about, people don't want to talk about Brexit. Okay, we're not going to talk about Brexit, because if we do, we're going to upset some people. That could be the case. They've done polling that we haven't seen, but the party has done polling, and they've asked, focus groups or whatever, what's your opinion on Brexit? And they go, we don't want to talk about Brexit. Okay, then we won't talk about Brexit. That could be the case. So maybe it's not fear, but it's an understanding that it's better not to talk about Brexit. I don't know. I'm just speculating. And do you think he's been unclear on what he wants to do if he gets elected? Some people would say they hope he's being unclear, that they hope he's lying, actually, that he's saying, I don't want to rejoin the European Union. And then as soon as he's in power, he will say, yes, now let's rejoin the European Union. I think what my fear is that Starmer is going to continue implementing Tory policies. Or not all of them, of course, but some of them. Because they keep talking about how they're going to take over a destroyed economy. They're going to take over a poison chalice. And they're going to have to be fiscally conservative. They won't say, they say fiscally tight. The budget will be tight. They won't be able to spend as much money as they want. They're going to impose a few, they're going to get rid of the non-dom tax status, but that's going to raise just buttons. But they're not talking about tax hikes on the rich, and they're not talking about borrowing. So the other alternative, if you're not going to raise taxes and you're not going to borrow, is to cut public services. So I really hope that this is the impression I'm getting. Now, they're not coming out and saying we're going to cut public services, but the funding that they're saying that they're going to raise in order to fund public services is nowhere near enough. And the public service is not just about money, it's also about, for example, staffing levels. How are you going to fix that? We're going to hire more nurses, we're going to hire more doctors, we're going to hire more police officers. Okay, but where are those people going to come from? How are you going to train them up? Like doctors and nurses, are you going to hire them from abroad? Are you going to have a better visa system? Are you going to try and bring back something like freedom of movement? They're not saying. So we have to speculate. But if you want to fix these problems, you need massive amounts of investment. And they're not saying where that's going to come from. They're saying the opposite. They're saying we're not going to spend a huge amount of money. We're going to be fiscally conservative with a small c. So I'm afraid that that Starmer and the Labour Party may just continue down the road of Tory policies. And that's not what the country needs. Thanks very much for that Super Chat AN98. Alistair has donated some memberships too. Thank you so much, Alistair. You're very kind. One to Frederick, one to Mad Monk, one to Pancaking On. I love that name. And one to Gareth, and one to Yoni. Hey, great to see you, Yoni. Hope you're well over there in Finland. Finland, the star, the shining light of of democracy. And I mean no pun. I mean no sarcasm there at all. A wonderful example that we should be following in many ways. Finland, for example, homelessness in Finland has been eliminated, I believe. You should look into how they achieved that. It's very interesting. Anyway, Andrew Luke has a super chat. Thank you so much, Andrew. Shout out to Peter Narcaro for inspiration. I've just had Amazon send Cruella a copy of that European Convention on Human Rights picture book. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to Peter for both Peter for the suggestion and Andrew for the initiative. Well done. Thanks for that. Kevin, great to see you once again. Thanks so much, Kevin. The first domino will fall when Scotland becomes independent and rejoin the EU, which will hasten a united Ireland, which will be in the EU by default, and will leave little England, who will beg to rejoin. Oh, and Wales. Yes, you should check out the Tig videos. The Irish comedian done some funny ones on loyalism in Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales becoming independent. So it's an interesting, yes, will Scotland become independent before Ireland, a United Ireland happens? A United Ireland is on the cards for 2030, but an independent Scotland, that could happen before that. It could happen even next year. It depends on if there are different ways it could go. It could go the way of the Scottish people saying we are independent and we have support from members of the United Nations, and this would force Westminster's hand. Or they could say, look, we've won a mandate in the Scottish Parliament, we won more seats, now we should have Section 30, or we should have a referendum. I think Scotland is, the Tories have been, a wonderful example of why Scotland should become independent. And going back to Keir Starmer from the previous Super Chat, I don't think Starmer is offering anything to Scotland to convince them to stay in the Union. Like, they can send Gordon Brown up again to try and convince the Scots to stay in the Union, but I think the damage has already been done. 13 years of Tory rule is very difficult to undo in 4 or 5 years. And what can the Labour Party in Scotland offer people who have switched, ex-Labour supporters, people who used to vote for the Labour Party all their lives? And I know a few of them, people who used to traditionally vote for the Labour Party, who have now switched to the SNP or have become members of the SNP. How do you win those people back? Can you win those people back? Probably not. Thanks so much, Kevin. We have a super chat from BC. Thank you so much, BC. Rejoining the EU will boost the economy. Yes, even talking about rejoining the European Union would boost the economy. If the UK turned around and said, look, Brexit was a disaster, let's start the process of rejoining the European Union, that would send a message to businesses, okay, we want to get back in. Now, would it mean that businesses would automatically turn around and start investing in the UK? Some might, but it wouldn't be a guarantee. And businesses want stability. So if they're afraid that it would become a problem, then this could turn off some businesses. But as soon as the UK would rejoin the European Union, that would say, okay, we're back in business. This would boost the economy a great deal because you'd have access to the workers you'd need. You would be able to attract investment. And the UK there are wonderful minds in the UK, and it would stop the brain drain. We're almost at the end of the stream, so I just wanted to cover one final story here related to VAT, value-added tax. Labour to add VAT to private school fees within first year if elected. So the party said it does not plan to phase in the change over several academic years if it enters Downing Street. Instead, it is understood that it will end the controversial tax breaks enjoyed by independent schools as soon as it possibly can. And this would raise £1.7 billion in investment for state schools. This is what should be happening. I fully support this policy. If you're sending your kids to private school and VAT is added, we could turn this around to the rich in society and say, well, if it's too expensive, you could cut back on your Netflix, or you could get a better paying job, as you tell people who are struggling to pay the bills. So who's struggling during a cost of living crisis, cut back on your Netflix, get a better paying job. That's what Tory MPs generally tell people who are struggling. So this is what they could say, and it's a good policy. It's the way to go. Richer people in society need to take some of the burden. I'm against the whole concept of private schools. I don't see the value in it. And in many cases, what do you get out? Look at Eton. Eton should be a prescribed organization. What has it delivered? Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg. These are people. Was it also David Cameron? He went to Eton. If this is what Eton produces, maybe Eton shouldn't exist. Okay, or definitely shouldn't have charity status, and it should be taxed to the hilt. So I think this would be the way to go, to tax the private schools fully. If they want to charge VAT, if they're businesses, they have to charge VAT. You have to charge VAT. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Sorry it was a shorter stream than usual. What about Hogwarts? Yes. Sorry it was a shorter stream than usual. I'll see you on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. But before we finish, we have our one for the road. I hope you enjoy this from Matt Green as usual.
Suella Braverman is saying some very provocative things today and arguably making her case to be the leader of the Conservative Party after the next election. Our forecasts, predictions and expectation management correspondent, Jonathan Goodenough, has more. Yes, that's right. The Home Secretary is expected to say some very negative things about the Refugee Convention. Things that will go down very well with the right of her party. What kind of things? Well, it's thought that she'll say that refugees aren't really refugees unless they're in black and white, and that we now live in a different time. Right? And it looks like she'll add that 780 million people could claim asylum in the UK, which as far as she's concerned is 780 million too many. Where did she say all this? She'll say all of this later today at a right-wing American think tank in Washington DC, following in the illustrious footsteps of people like Oliver Dowden and Liz Truss, who were also taken seriously there for some reason. So, sorry, has the speech actually happened yet? No, but she is anticipated to say a lot of things that the right-wing press will enjoy, which is why she's on the front pages of all of them today. So if she hasn't given the speech yet, how do you know what she's going to say? Because the text of her speech was sent to the media in advance. Why's that? Well, probably so she can get all of the glowing headlines beforehand, just in case the speech actually doesn't go well, or she says something stupid during the Q&A. So you're basically reporting a press release as fact. Doesn't that make what you're doing not journalism, but PR? No, I wouldn't say that, but maybe she will. That's certainly possible, but not anticipated. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as confusion reigns over Rishi Sunak's plans for HS2, we ask, where exactly is Old Oak Common, and why would people from Birmingham want to get there quite fast?
So guys, thank you. Oh, we have a super chat from, let me see, from Peter again. Thank you so much, Peter. If we get any immigrants from Scotland after independence, will they be told to move on or allowed to stay? Yes, you have to move on to the next safe country. That's what will happen if any immigrants from Scotland. But I think it'd be more immigrants to Scotland if Scotland becomes independent. Thanks so much, Peter. And we have David McGuinness. Thanks so much, David. Private education should be closed down. Yes, there's no justification for it. Apologies, my dog is barking. It's going crazy, so I'll have to go. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Hopefully same bat time, same bat channel. If not, I will inform you. Have a great night, and I'll see you soon. And as always, take care. Good night.